And so if you look at Asia's average inflation, it's around 5.5%, or rather, I should say it peaked at around 5.5%. It's already down by about 0.5% from that peak levels. And that compares to the US, which peaked at 9%, and Europe, which is also around that 8.5%, 9%. So Asia's inflation rates, first of all, are not that high. But the more important part is Asia's inflation has been largely driven by cost push factors. If you look at the demand situation, that can be measured by looking at the GDP trend relative to pre-COVID path. And we are still, for most economies, below pre-COVID path. And the way I would describe the state of recovery in Asia is that it's actually most of the economies are in mid-cycle stage. So I think that's the most important reason why we think inflation will come in control and central banks will not have to take policy rates into deeply restrictive territory. Two other points to remember is that, look, part of the inflation rise globally, but particularly even in Asia, was driven by a core goods component. And that goods demand had seen a massive rise because of pandemic in the US and caused a demand-supply imbalance. But that's all healing now. Demand is coming off, supply chains are improving. And so core goods component is also going to see deceleration going forward. And then finally, the labor market in Asia is not that tight. As you know, the discourse in the US is that core inflation will stay high because the labor markets are tight. But in Asia, labor markets are not that tight. And so I think that's going to also help ensure that services inflation doesn't go too much high.
Chetan, can you confidently say that in this part of the world, the Indo-Pacific, inflation has peaked?
Yeah, absolutely. Inflation has peaked. If you look at the data, that's already indicative of that. And more importantly, into going forward, we think you should see downside risk to inflation. And in the last 1 month, a number of countries saw that downside surprise in inflation. You saw it on Australia. You saw a little bit in India, on Friday. So, yeah, we are seeing more and more signs of inflation actually surprising on the downside.